Now, we talk about nutrition,
Yes.
and there's a lot of misinformation and confusion when it comes to nutrition. You've got so many, let's say, just so many ideas that are out
Right,
there
right.
that conflict with each other.
Yes.
And you've had the paleo diet and the keto diet, the Whole30 diet. I saw that there is the eat this, not that diet. There's the genotype diet.
Right.
There's I'm going to flip through a couple of these. I've got these on my computer here. The mind, body, soul diet. There's the world peace diet. There's the chili pepper diet. I found that there is the lemon juice diet. There's the flat belly diet. There's the my DNA, the 9-inch diet, whatever that means. The healthy fast food diet. We've got the soft taco hard body diet. The wine diet.
Yes.
Some people might like that one, huh?
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
there's also the beer diet cookbook. So there's so much misinformation out there.
It's crazy.
And going to a bookstore, which maybe those won't exist in 5 years, but going to a bookstore, I hope they exist, by the way.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
need books, hard copy books.
Yeah.
We shouldn't let Jeff Bezos be in charge of our books, in my mind. Going to a bookstore, it's so confusing. You see all this misinformation, but it takes people down a pathway to then create so much confusion where they just don't do anything.
Yeah.
And so how can we weed through the misinformation when it comes to quote diet, again, naughty word in our
Right.
world, but
Right.
how do we help people to weed through this?
Well, first, let's talk about that diet thing for just a second. So if I've got financial problems, I go to a financial manager and he says, I'm going to put you on a financial diet. So for 30 days, you're going to do X, Y, and Z, and you're going to see improvements in your finances. Okay, so what happens after the 30 days?
Party.
If you go right back to the same crazy way you were living financially, okay, you've got financial problems again.
Have you got more money? Let's spend it.
There you go. That's exactly what people think. And so what happens when they go on this diet in the food world is, okay, I've been in deprivation. I hated every minute of it, and now I'm going to go party. Okay, first I want to establish why we don't like that word diet. But when you believe in something and you're convinced of it and you fall in love with it, and you've heard me make this statement, you better fall in love with health or sickness is going to fall in love with you. Mm-hmm. But that has to be real. That has to be real. Everybody knows when you fall in love with something, no one can talk you out of it. Okay? Mm-hmm. All right? I'm not just talking about ladies or vice versa. When we're convinced of something, fully persuaded, we are sold on it. And the Bible says, be fully persuaded. Nobody should be able to talk you out of your faith that Jesus died for you and your sins. And once you're convinced of what real food is and you're convinced of what you should be eating, nobody's going to be able to talk you out of it either. That being said, we get back to why there's all these diets. One is because people like to make money. Let's just be honest. Mm-hmm. They create these diets because they can sell several 100,000 books, and then people get discouraged again and buy another book with several 100,000 because we haven't come to the realization that this is just about principle and consistency. Every farmer knows you don't just throw seed out on dirt and you get this great harvest. There's work involved. Mm-hmm. There's time involved. There's seasons involved. Same thing with our health. So let's look at some basics. First, we are designed from the earth based on Scripture. Mm-hmm. Okay? We're not made out of plastics. We're not made out of chemicals that are synthetics. Okay? That is the first thing we want to establish. So we don't eat those things, although many of us do, or many people do.
Well, so I had a patient who was a newer patient, and it was told to me that this person wanted to do some more advanced nutrient testing and toxicity testing.
Right.
And so I was meeting with this person, and I was just asking some simple questions about her food log and what she eats.
Right.
And she's saying, I eat really well, and I still have all these problems, and she's going through this. And I said, okay, so you eat really well. Tell me what you ate yesterday. And then she walked through what she ate yesterday. Right. And she said, kind of off the cuff, she talked about all the good stuff, all like fruits and vegetables. And really it seemed like it was a lot of that. She's like, oh, and also, I've got this habit where I, eat Skittles constantly. And also I've got this really bad habit of this Pepsi. And I'm like, talk to me a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
How bad is this bad habit that you describe? Is it like once a month? Is it quarterly? And she's like, oh no, daily and constantly. Well, I've got an idea. Mm-hmm. Let's stop that first before we do any advanced testing. Before we do anything else, let's address the root cause of the problem. There's some interference there that's happening on a daily basis because of how you're living.
Sure, of
And
course.
we minimize these things, and most people, I think, perceive how they eat to be better than what they actually do.
Right. Right.
And the little things that they do on a daily or weekly basis doesn't really feel like it's adding up, but it's amazing when you actually remove those barriers, remove those interferences, what the body starts to do. But if we constantly interfere with the body, or we constantly feed it nutrition that's poisonous to the body, well, it has no time to recover.
That's right. Well, the Bible says the little foxes spoil the vine. There just takes these little incremental things that get us going the wrong direction. And so, to speak further about the food thing, when you look at basic principles, first, the body is 72% plus water. The bloodstream is 80% water. Saliva is about 98% water. Okay, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to stop and think for just a minute. If you've got that much water involved, it would stand to reason that you need water, not just drinking water. If you go back to the beginning, before we had faucets, before we had plumbing, people had to get their water in different ways, and it had to come through mainly fruits and vegetables. There's lots of water in fruits and vegetables. And then they drink other water from running streams and so forth, okay? So if we take all the advertising out of it and all of the money-making production out of it, we get back to what really was happening here with real food. It grows from the vine primarily. We get lots of water and hydration, nutrients and minerals in that way. Once we begin to drift away from that and we have all these new inventions, we're definitely going to pay a price. There's no doubt we're going to pay a price for it, okay? Now, there are some things that are packaged and boxed that are prepared better than others, yes, but you can't grow a Twinkie. Just plant one and see. It doesn't work.
Wait a second. So I'm about to start a garden here. Are you telling me I can't grow Twinkies in that backyard?
Are you disappointed?
Oh man, I thought I was going to make some money finally off of growing food.
So that amazing innate intelligence you talked about is actually running in our foods if they're real. It's running in our foods.
Yes.
Okay.
They're called exosomes, and it's literally it's the nutrients speak to our DNA.
Isn't that amazing?
I mean, berries. Just think about berries. Depending on the environment that they were grown, speaks differently to your DNA depending on if it was grown in the sun or grown in less heat. Speak differently to your DNA.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? And you know, the Lord showed me this as I began to press into this, and I was praying. Sometimes you don't see things unless the Holy Spirit illuminates you to something. But He said, the body runs on the directive of love. And I had to stop and just think about that when He spoke that to me, and I began to see the connections, just like a flash of light. The Bible says, no greater love hath a man than to give his life for another. This was what sent Jesus to the cross. He said, no man can take my life, but I lay it down. It was love. When God breathed life into Adam, what He breathed into him was the directive of love. And science has proven this. Even if they're not believers, they can't deny the fact that our body is running on a survival mechanism that if one organ is suffering, others will take up slack for it. Do you know that the pituitary gland has the ability to produce estrogen if it's under pressure to do so?
You'll never see that in a medical textbook, the basic ones. But yes, you're exactly right.
Isn't that amazing? Our bodies run on the directive of love. Love, faith works by love. Love is what God is. So how could you not have some of that running in the body if love breathes life into something? Trust me, love is what the mechanism is running on, okay? And I could elaborate on that. I need to write a book on this because there's so much revelation to see in this. We can't continue to, even though love endures long, love suffers long, and the body endures long and suffers long, but there comes a time when love begins to fizzle out. I've watched people who loved other folks and endured for a long time, but if we don't speak to the root causes of something that's attacking that relationship, eventually love begins to burn out. So I want to say to our listeners, what we're talking about is somewhat supernatural. When God put food in the earth, some of His own life went into that. That doesn't exist in packaged, wrapped, microwaved things. It's not there, okay? And enzymes are what represents that life, at least what we can see under a microscope biologically. There's another step now that we're learning, string theory, which is the energy actually in these things. We're now learning more about that in quantum physics. But when God said, "Let there be light," that word there is not the same word for the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, you don't have to spend 5 decades studying this, but that should impact you to know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Well, we call that life-giving food.
That's right.
Life-giving food.
That's right.
And so when it comes to nutrition, we're talking about principle-based nutrition right now. So what does that mean? Well, it means by eating by a certain principle, not a specific diet.
Yes.
Not rules and regulation, but principles that guide your decision making.
Well, and a good thing to add here, how many times has a patient said to you, "But I don't like that, but I don't like those.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like grapes, I don't like apples, but I do like Skittles." Well, if let's take that for just a minute and apply it to every area of our life. Well, I just don't like having just one woman. I want 6.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't like that. Well, I just don't like having one beer. I want 20 beers. I don't like just owning.
I had a patient tell me, I said, "Drink lots of water," and he said, "Is there water in beer?" Phil, he was dead serious.
Well, I believe you. I believe that that's true. I'm just saying, when you take something you've wrapped your head around to put your faith in and believe in it, you got to take it across the board and see if it works in all those areas. If you're just going to live by, "I just don't like that,"
mm-hmm.
your life is going to be a mess.
Right.
It's going to be a mess.
In my heyday, when I was less refined, I would say things like, "Well, do you like chemotherapy?" I mean,
Well,
let's just be real
you've got
here.
a point.
I mean, do you like hospitals? I'm sorry. Sometimes, when I'm talking to my 3-year-old and talking to my 3-year-old, and he'll say things like, "I don't like that." In my mind, I'm just thinking, well, he's going to mature through this. He's going to grow up. But then we hear that same thing from someone who's 55.
That's right.
And, just candidly, grow up. Let's change your taste buds. What do you really want in your life? I mean, why are we having this conversation right now? Figure out what it is that's good for you, and this is what we're talking about, and then grow up. Start consuming more of that, because what do you want your outcome of your life to be? At the end of the day, we have to consider that sickness and disease is the antithesis of God's plan for our life.
Yes.
It's the opposite.
Yeah. Right.
And so we consider those things financially, and we consider them maybe with our marriage and how we raise our kids. But let's start the conversation about how this applies to our health.
Yes, and that reminds me of a scripture that a lot of people quote, but I don't think they understand it. God will give you the desires of your heart. And a lot of people wrap their head around that and go, "Hey, that's great. If I desire something, God's just going to give it to me." That's not what that scripture means. What the scripture means, if you study it out in the Greek and Hebrew, it means that God, if you relate to God and seek God, He will actually change the desires of your heart. He will add desires to your heart that are His desires. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And this is congruent with the rest of Scripture. When we're interpreting Scripture, it has to be in the light of other Scripture, because the Bible doesn't go against itself. So whenever you've pulled a Scripture out to serve your own fleshly desires, you're already heading down a wrong path here. Okay? God will give you the desires of your heart. If you seek His kingdom first, He's going to change and trim away and form His desires in you. In fact, He wants to impregnate you with a dream that He wants for you. God's not into giving birth to Ishmaels, okay, which many people know the story. Now, God blessed Ishmael because he was good, but that wasn't His plan, okay? Some of us get things inside of us because of our own fleshly desires. So God will give you the desires of your heart. That doesn't mean He gives you whatever you want. That's a big, big misnomer. Big misnomer.
So when it comes to nutrition, we're talking about, what are the foods that we should eat and shouldn't eat, right? And when we start talking about animal products, because this is maybe controversial now. It's become more controversial.
Right.
Should we be consuming animals, or should we not? And if so, how much? What's your response there?
Well, I go back to our Creator, okay? First of all, before the fall, animals were Adam's companions. He wasn't eating them, okay, until he said it's not good that man should be alone, so Eve comes along, but up until then, he's not eating them. Mm-hmm. Secondly, if we look, let's say we don't believe in God, but we just look at ourselves anatomically. All right. So who's going to run through a field, tackle a cow, and start gnawing on it? That's if we're just in the primitive world, we don't have any advertising, we have no steakhouses. It doesn't sound appetizing to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I hope it doesn't to you.
Well, one of my professors said if we released a pig in this room, how many of you know how to tackle it, capture it, and start feeding on it within this amount of time? And,
Right.
And the reality is none of us would look at that as appetizing as a pig running around.
No. So something had to come in to that realm to flip that around and make it appetizing to us. You know, advertising, factories, money, packaging, whatever. But I can anatomically walk up and pick berries. I can pick apples. I can eat them raw without any processing whatsoever and survive. In fact, one of my mentors, Dr. Joel Robbins, said that we worry a lot about protein, like, well, will we have any muscle? You know, gorillas are the strongest animal that we're aware of today.
Pound for pound.
Pound for pound,
Yep.
okay? Their gut anatomically is almost identical to the human.
Mm-hmm.
They can exist solely on fruit without any problem, and they can still tear you in half. Okay, so you think they have a problem with muscle and protein? No, they don't. We've been sold a bill of goods, but we have to remember, you cannot serve both God and mammon. Mammon is a word about a system. Once the system comes in and affects us so that we're not looking to serve God first and money becomes the sole focus, we don't get the truth. Okay, so this is what's causing our food industry to go south and lots of other industries to go south. We have idols. And God is not the chief. And he
right.
said that thou shalt have no other gods before me. And when we do, we pay a price. When the wicked rule, people suffer. Okay? So these are things that are never going to change. We have to base this on principle. So that's my first thing, is looking at the body's anatomical design, looking at, again, that we are largely water, and that in the beginning, animals were Adam's companions. Now, I am not a vegetarian. I don't really teach vegetarianism, but I will tell you this, based on chemistry, if you're not eating about 80% raw fruits and vegetables, you're going to have disease process based on years and years of what I have learned. Okay.
Well, and the more of that you eat, the more likely your body has the ingredients to fight it.
That's right.
And survive and build a strong immunity. Now, we have receptors in our mouth, that the only receptors, the reason why they're there is to detect meat, as an example.
Right.
Right. And we know that our teeth are designed in a certain way to be able to crush nuts and berries, but also to be able to eat meat. We have certain things in our body that are only there to be able to digest meat. So you're not saying to get rid of all meat or go vegan or go completely plant-based. That's not what you're saying.
No. But I'm also definitely saying that if you're going to consume massive amounts of protein, especially meat proteins, there's a lot of data that supports, and this isn't always coming from our Christian brothers that are wonderful doctors as well that have taught us these things from the scriptures. I'm talking about people that just went to Harvard. They may not even believe in God, or went to Yale. They may not even believe in God, but it's on their websites that people who consume lots of red meat or lots of these processed meats have a much higher rate of colorectal cancer and other things. It's very, very clear that they do. So I am saying that. And another thing I want to mention about the meat thing is, you know, people who are hunters that probably never even eat a piece of processed meat. They're just fishing and hunting. They're just getting, you know, wild animals that probably have never had hardly anything bad come into their systems, no injections. That's a whole different picture.
And we're not talking about grass-fed beef either. So there's a very
Right.
big difference from
Right.
grass-fed versus grain-fed.
That's correct.
You know, grass-fed beef has lower properties of things that would cause inflammation within the body, whereas grain-fed beef is completely inflammatory. It's not about what you eat, it's what your food ate.
Right.
And grain-fed beef is inflammatory in the body. It's going to cause and contribute to things like arthritis and osteoporosis. And we talk about one of the myths is that fat in meats causes heart disease, cancer, osteoporosis, and kidney disease. You've been lied to if you've been told that, because meat eating societies have lived free of heart disease and cancer for centuries. They're not going out there and pounding meat like the average American would
Right,
be.
right.
They're not having it every meal. You consider what a primitive society looks like, and they have to go get their food, hunt their food, and that one meal might last, or that one kill might last them for a period of time, but then they have to go back out there and get another one.
Yeah.
And it's what was readily accessible, and I liked how you say this, are the fruits and vegetables and things you grow in your own area, and you can have those in plentiful amounts, really.
Right.
It's hard to go get meat.
Right.
It's hard to go make that kill.
Right.
And so just looking at that, and again, I'm not a fan of the ancestral thought there, but the underlying understanding there is that we have generations of history of people who've gone out there and had to find their own food, and there are some principles that we can learn from those people.
That's correct.
And so here's another thing that I hear, Dr. Phil, is fat makes you fat. And so you should avoid all fat. So talk to me about that. Fat makes you fat.
Well, here again, we have to filter that statement. It sounds right if you don't put any filtering into it, if you don't look at it, a little more intuitively. But what really causes the body to build fat is if the body can't process something, or if there are toxins in it, the body will actually make fat to store the toxin to keep it out of vital organs. So fat that the body is making, this goes back to innate intelligence again. Innate intelligence is involved in everything. Whether you're taking a drug or whether you're taking an herb or a vitamin, if it wasn't for innate intelligence, nothing would work with anything. It's involved with everything. So really, there is no such thing as fat makes us fat. The body is going to make you fat based on what you're taking in because it's trying to save your life. So somebody who's getting larger and larger and larger, we would say they're getting sicker and sicker and sicker, but hear me out for just a minute. The body's actually making the fat or nodules or tumors to save your life. That's what it's doing because innate intelligence is always involved in this. Now, eventually, we go bankrupt. You've heard me teach this. The great law of deposit and withdrawal. Nobody escapes this law. You keep eating foods that make withdrawals instead of deposits, and eventually your body's going to go bankrupt.
That's right.
Okay, and that is to the point where we're at the edge of death. Okay, but to speak to that more directly, if we take in fats that are raw and toxin-free, the body can break these down and use them. In fact, it helps with our energy, it helps stabilize sugar, it helps with our brain, it helps with inflammation, okay? And we've seen this where people that are consuming these healthy fats, their cholesterol comes down.
That's right.
Instead of goes up. And you can speak to that too.
That's incredible. So that's one of the incredible things I started noticing early on in practice is because we advise people, eat good, load up on good, healthy fats. It's hard to get too much fat when they're good, healthy, like raw seeds, raw nuts. You talk about olive oil and extra virgin olive oil.
Right.
The caveat with olive oil is if you cook on the stove with it too high, the melting point is too low, and so then it turns it from a good fat to a bad
That's
fat.
correct.
So that's why we recommend cooking with coconut oil or grapeseed oil or the higher melting point fats. Grass-fed beef, it's anti-inflammatory. We also talk about fish,
right.
And that's the caveat with fish is the toxicity, which we'll get into that as well. But so we advise them to eliminate the bad fat, load up on good, healthy fats. It's hard to get too much of that.
Yeah.
Now, the caveat would be you could probably eat meat and chicken every meal and do that. You could probably do that, and that would be problematic long term because if you're replacing that with life-giving foods such as the fruits, the vegetables, caveat there is organic.
Yes.
But when I give this, let's call it a diet, the principle-based nutrition, to a patient who has high cholesterol, they're looking at this and looking at me like I'm crazy. They're like, you're telling me I'm going the exact opposite of what the dietitian's advice is. This is the exact opposite.
Right, absolutely. Yeah.
And you're telling me that I'm going to get healthier because of this? And it's like mind-blowing. And what's amazing is when that person does it and then goes back and gets the testing results back and they're like, I cannot believe my cholesterol went from 270 down to 190.
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
Right.
It was the exact opposite advice.
Right.
And yet here we are as a society, because we've made fat the enemy, we're recommending things like canola oil.
Right.
canola oil, which the reason why they recommended that is because of the fact that it's low fat. But here it is, it's completely artificial. It stands for Canadian low acid. It's made from rapeseed oil, which is completely synthetic, and yet we call it healthy because there's lower fat content.
Right. Right.
And yet we're making things like margarine. We're saying things like margarine is healthier, again, lower fat content. We say I can't believe it's not butter.
Right.
Well, it's not. It's
Yeah.
not butter.
No.
You know, it's been said it's one molecule away from plastic. I don't know how real that is, but I do know if you put it in the woods, margarine right next to butter, the animals eat the butter. They're not eating the margarine.
Yeah.
What do they know? They have an innate sixth sense that we haven't developed. We've been tricked into believing that that thing is somehow food, and we put it on our whatever substances or what's
Right.
our breads or whatever. And so we've been tricked to believe those things are healthy.
Right.
They're not healthy. Hydrogenated oils and partially hydrogenated oils, they're not healthy.
No, they're not.
Chemistry, a lot of chemistry involved there, and made it very cheap to make these things, and then it's pitched to the general public as if it's some type of hero because it's lower fat.
Well, and after we talk about all this, it seems overwhelming sometimes to people. It's like, wow, listening to you guys is fun and interesting, but I just can't handle it. I'm just going to eat donuts and die happy. But the thing is, first of all, you probably won't die happy. But listen, God didn't make this complicated. We did.
That's right.
If we hadn't have gotten into the processing and the shelf life and the money making, idols, this would have always been simple. We would have just had to grow our food, walk out and pick our food and eat our food. It would not have been complicated. We're the ones that complicated it. Okay, so I just want to make sure we're clear about that.
Mm-hmm.
And so the reason why we're having this talk today, we're having to unravel the confusion that's come that has made this such a mess. We've said it here at the clinic many times. Health is not that complicated.
Mm-hmm.
We have made it complicated. I've told patients we have right kidney specialists. That's what they're paid to do, is focus on the right kidney, because it's different than the left kidney. Okay. But how much sense does it make to have a right kidney specialist if you consume sodas every day and you're eating Pop-Tarts every day and you're eating processed food every day and you won't drink water? I've had people say to me, but I don't like water. Okay, well, wow. I mean, if your body's 72% water, you kind of have to like water. Okay, so if we keep on thinking this way and we keep on breaking principles, we're going to pay a price for it. My point is, we wouldn't need all these specialized areas of health, like right kidney specialist, if we just kept our bodies clean.
Mm-hmm.
Your kidneys will work just fine.
Well, and what you'll hear is, well, doc, I don't eat Pop-Tarts every day, or I don't drink Pepsi every single day. But have you given your body rest without it? How much time have you gone without it?
Right.
I would argue, how much time have you spent eating, let's just not say perfect, but eliminating those things that you know are completely toxic to human health?
Right.
How much time have you spent letting your body rebuild, repair, and rejuvenate without, let's say, without even any food?
Right.
Have you fasted for a period of time?
Right.
Have you went through not just intermittent fasting, but have you gone a period of time without food in general?
Right.
I mean, there's principles here that your body, understanding this, your body starts to rebuild, rejuvenate, and repair when you start eliminating these types of
That's right.
things for periods of time. The average American should be fasting on a regular, semi-regular basis.
That's exactly correct.
On some
Yep.
level. If it's only, for the only reason, to not become so sugar or sweetened dependent.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we talk about heart disease, and we talked about cholesterol.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I'll hear this about cholesterol is that, yeah, but cholesterol causes heart disease. And cholesterol is the underlying cause of it. And that's the reason why I need to avoid all these things and
Yeah.
lower the cholesterol and do all these artificial things.
Right.
What's your response to that? Is cholesterol the cause of heart disease?
No, and actually the studies don't show that at all. But it does make for a great foundation to sell a lot of statin drugs, which is now the number one selling drug in the industry.
Well, more people, did you know this? More people have heart attacks with low cholesterol now than high cholesterol.
Yes.
More
Yeah.
people. Why is that? Well, because one of the best-selling drugs out there is a statin medication,
Yes.
and yet our heart disease and heart attacks rates have not actually changed.
Right. Right.
Why do we have cholesterol? Well, cholesterol is a response to inflammation in the body.
That's exactly right.
And so cholesterol is just there to put out the flame of the fire of inflammation. And so our liver makes the cholesterol in order to, think about this, why would our liver make something that was completely harmful to us?
Yes.
Well, our brain is made up of high cholesterol. Our brain is made up of cholesterol primarily and fat.
That's right.
And so there's cholesterol-based hormones. Our cholesterol is needed in the body. In fact, when you lower cholesterol artificially, you're going to lower that not just from arteries, you're going to lower that everywhere. You're going to lower the production of it too.
Yes.
And so what happens over time, if you do that over time and take the cholesterol-lowering medications, just have to be clear here, is that you will end up causing harm to your brain because of the fact that the brain is made up of cholesterol and fat.
Right.
And so it's literally robbing Peter to pay Paul here.
Right. Well, that's interfering again with this amazing innate intelligence that is striving to keep our body alive regardless of the cost. The body runs on love, and we get involved in it and we get it all messed up. There's always a price to pay when man decides to manipulate God's design. We are not smarter than God. In fact, the scriptures say that the foolishness of God is wiser than the wisest man. And so we have to respect that as we move in, no matter what department we work in, no matter what profession we work in, especially in health and wellness. We definitely need to respect that.
Well, the real question is what causes the inflammation? And that really should be what we need to consider.
That's right.
What causes this person's inflammation?
That's right.
And we know there's three primary causes of inflammation. There's bad fats, which we talked about. There's sugar that we kind of touched on, but we need to go into a little bit more in depth there.
Yeah.
Because it's not just sugar; it's that which turns into sugar. But then there's also toxicity.
That's right.
So those are three primary causes of inflammation. Now, sugar is a big offender, and the average person that I talk to will say, "Well, doc, I don't eat sugar." Well, there's things that actually turn to sugar that you have to be aware of.
That's exactly right.
One of them is grains. So talk to me about grains.
Well, and pastas and white flours are all involved in this, and you're exactly right. I mean, I've seen the blood work, the glycemic index of eating just a piece of wheat toast and a candy bar, and they had the exact same spike in sugar. Well, who would believe that?
Right.
In the average world, nobody thinks that's true, but it is true. And it's not just all breads. It's what we've done to breads. It's what we've done to our grains. It's what we've done to our fields. It's how we process again. If we get back to biblical times, the way that they made breads, it's not the same.
Exactly.
It's not the same.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we make that caveat. Ancient grains are different.
Yeah.
Than let's say the worst offenders would be like the white breads, the white flours, and those things. So if you're eating that would be right now. It's just right now, move away from that. There's no controversy whatsoever. Where you start to get in the gray areas is the whole wheat form of anything.
Yes.
And it's the way that is developed and hybridized in everything that's really foreign to our bodies because it was brought. So it really was planted here. If you look up, I think Sayer G did the best job of this recently with his book called Regenerate, of really painting the picture of why wheat really is foreign to our bodies. And so getting as far away from that as possible. And that would be like the ancient grains. And so ancient grains, what are some of the ancient grains that are actually beneficial to our body and healthy to our body?
Well, quinoa.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Is one of them. I think that, most of the, in fact, we're seeing a real influx of this in the stores. I mean, as recently I'm noticing they're coming out with not just breads, but they're coming out with pancakes and waffles that are ancient grain based. They're coming out with tortillas that are ancient grain based, and the body treats these so differently. I'm so interested in looking at how people call these things new. Have you seen the new this and the new that? The truth is, the Bible says there's nothing new under the sun. What we're doing is we're bringing the truth back in front of us again that we've gotten away from. It's absolutely true. Go back and study the early doctors, even Hippocrates. You'll see the information is there. It's right there. We just drifted away from it, and the reasons we do is almost always the lust of the eye, the pride of life, the desire to make money, which supersedes truth. But I just want people to realize when people say something's new, there really isn't anything new about truth. Truth has been congruent from the beginning of time. We've just gotten away from it, and we come around to reinvent it.
And if you look up what ancient grains are, because many people just haven't, if they heard these words, it's not what they're consuming when they're consuming breads and pastas and rices. But I mean, just a few of these names: amaranth, millet. You look at what's another one? Kamut, sorghum, teff. Like, these are just things that people aren't necessarily seeking out or consuming.
Well, it's not common vernacular. People don't talk about these words much.
Barley. You mentioned quinoa, bulgur. Right. So these are just rye. I mean, these are just things that really are not necessarily taught or talked about. But it's not like, so here's what happens, is when you say, hey, ancient grains are okay, when it comes to eating, what a lot of people, because we live in a grain-fed society, a lot of people just load up on ancient grains because it's filling.
Right.
And it's more filling than, let's say, an apple, or it's more filling than berries or anything like that. And so what becomes the vast majority of their diet still ends up coming in a box that is made with ancient grains. So it's still processed, but now it's made with ancient grains. And there's good, better, and best. And that would not be in the category of best when it comes to the vast majority of your diet should not be coming from things that come in a box.
That's correct.
And yet we tend to snack on those things quite a bit.
Right.
And so after dinner snack, that's the most common thing that I find with patients getting into trouble, is that they'll eat really well, and then the after dinner snack is then where they kind of throw everything in the toilet, and then they don't end up getting that fasting state when they go to sleep.
That's
because what breakfast really is break fast.
That's right. That's a good point.
And so if we, let's say you have dinner at 6 or 7 o'clock, and then you eat until 9 or 10 o'clock just by snacking.
That's right.
And you have that 7 to 8, maybe 9 hour window of not necessarily eating. Well, ideally, you get that every night. You get between 11 and 12 hours of fasting, and that way you break your fast with healthy nutrients. Ideally, like a juice would be a great way to break that fast.
Raw juice,
Or a shake that has good, healthy nutrients in it.
Right.
But whatever you put into your body first is what your body's going to utilize.
That's right.
And yet, what do we typically put in our body? The average American, first thing, we break the fast with what? Cereal.
Toast and coffee.
There you go, toast. And, or in your example, Pop-Tarts.
That's right. That's right.
So when it comes to this, it's not, just think if that person just did this, they cut out the sugar, anything that turns to sugar. They made the lateral move from the, let's say, white bread or wheat bread to more like ancient grains.
Right.
They stopped snacking after dinner on processed foods, and then they limited their meat consumption to, let's say, dinner. They just did this. Their dinner had some form of meat. The other meals did not. They just did that right there and loaded up on water.
Right.
Instead of whatever else that they were consuming, the coffee or the pop or soda. They just made those decisions right there.
Yes.
And they did that consistently over 90 days.
Right.
Raw seeds, raw nuts as their form of fat. They changed out their bad fats to good fats. Is that person going to be better in their life? Of course that person's going to be better. Is that person going to heal over everything that they have? I don't know that, but the point is that person going to be better off by doing those things?
Right. Sure.
Is that person going to reverse chronic disease? I can show you a lot of different examples of that person. If they did that and they made some other moves with some of the other essentials, that person, yes, has a very good chance of reversing chronic disease. And maybe in certain cases, you need high-level testing for nutrients and toxicities for that person, of course.
Yep.
But if that person lived like that and then raised the next generation of people to live like that, well, geez, we have a good public health model here that is going to combat the top things that are killing us.
Yes.
Heart disease and cancer and diabetes.
Right.
And so why is this not well known? Well, maybe it is well known. Maybe it's just not well implemented.
Right.
Maybe it's, you give that person who knows this information, you give them an apple and a donut, they still might choose the donut, but the world needs to understand this, and especially the church needs to be leaders in this. And instead of maybe putting out donuts for Friends Day or whatever it is.
Right. And it happens often. Yeah.
That we actually make healthy decisions. When we come together as a church, look at what we eat when we come together as a church or as a group of people of faith. Like, what do those meals look like? Right. We're so worried about entertaining our friends and family and making sure they feel comfortable. Well, disease is very uncomfortable, and we have to recognize that.
That's right.
It's way more uncomfortable to have a meal and talk about nutrition and why we chose ancient grain bread instead of your traditional roll or yeast roll that we put out there,
right.
it's way more uncomfortable to then hear about that person who has cancer.
It sure is.
And now we have the prayer vigils, and we bring people up to the altars, and we talk about we're praying for healing, and then what do? We continue living like the rest of the world on Monday.
That's a great point. It goes back to the other example I gave about finances. If somebody comes up and says, pray for me, I need God to help my finances, okay, fine, I'll pray for you. But if we don't have the entrance of light and understanding, and how did you get to this point? Are you breaking every financial principle known to man? Are you running up your credit cards? If we don't get that taken care of, what's going to happen? Even if God sent them $100,000 the next day in the mail in some miracle way, if you don't get the principles straight, you're going to be bankrupt again.
Right.
And the same thing is true in our health. The Bible says, know you not that you are the temple of the Holy Spirit. So now God says, I don't dwell in temples built with hands anymore, not brick, stained glass. I live inside of you. So we should think God would like to live inside of a very healthy temple. And so we need to honor God with our bodies, and often we don't. And some of it's lack of knowledge. Like I said at first, my people perish for lack of knowledge, but sometimes it's just sheer rebellion. We just refuse to do it. We just will not comply. And then we pay quite a price for it. So, when we have attitudes and difficulties in our lives and our families and stress, like the world is stressed out, yes, at this point, people often run to food as their pacifier. And we have to be careful of that as well, because it can become a God above God, that brings peace to us. Because look, when you eat, a lot of blood goes to the stomach, especially if you eat a lot. And when blood moves to the stomach, the brain slows down and you feel sedated. This can become a pattern where people eat to feel sedated because they don't want to face their issues, or they don't know how to face their issues. That's one of the reasons people run to food.
That's right. And if it's not food, it's drink.
That's right.
So that Starbucks Frappuccino, because people will say, I don't eat sugar. Well, do you drink it?
That's right.
A Starbucks Frappuccino is the equivalent to a 12-ounce Coke.
Yeah.
Or more Pepsi,
That's
whatever
absolutely
you choose.
true. Yeah.
And you look at it, and we have no difficulty turning to the big gulp or whatever, because it
Right.
might not be Starbucks Frappuccino.
Right.
It might be the fact that you go into the gas station. Well, one of my personal rules for myself is I don't eat from places where I also fill up my car. So I don't fuel my body at the same place where I fuel my car.
Right.
Just like I never will eat gas station food ever.
Yeah.
Or drink anything that has any calories besides water.
Yeah.
And so and water does not have calories. But if I'm on a road trip, I'll stop at a gas station and get some water. Right.
Right.
But the point there is that if you don't eat it, you're likely drinking it. And so what are some of the alternatives maybe that people can utilize for sugar? So here I am. I'm the average American. I'm sugar dependent. I know I'm a sugar burner, not a fat burner at this point. What can I do maybe to make a lateral move to go from sugar, my taste buds know that I'm addicted to sugar at this point. What can I do then to substitute maybe sugar that's more healthy?
Well, first thing I want to say, and this isn't even, I don't think it's well taught yet in the medical and even in the wellness community, the body doesn't treat sugar that comes from grapes or an apple the same way as it does white GMO sugar. It doesn't treat it the same, okay? So I have a lot of people telling my patients, well, you can't have a half an apple, that's too much sugar. The body doesn't treat that sugar the same way, especially if it's organic. There's lots of enzymes and nutrients that help the body process. It's not the same. That's the first thing I want to say. So let's say you want to eat a bowl of an organic grain cereal, hot or cold, and you want to sweeten it. Well, you could just slice some apples into it, and that might be enough. That's one thought. Let's just use God's food again with real sweetener. The next thing, of course, is stevia, which has become popular. Monk fruit I like a lot because it tastes more like real sugar, and I think it's more likely to satisfy the human taste buds. Some people think stevia has a little bit of a funky aftertaste, so they don't like it. I like monk fruit a lot. And there's other things on the market now that they're even blending together, monk fruit and stevia blended. I've seen that before too. But I think the first thing is, why not look at God's foods that have natural sugars in them that we can use to sweeten things? Raw honey. can be, it has enzymes and nutrients in it, but we don't want to pour a half a pint of honey on something. Everything is done discretionally and so forth.
That's right.
But there are lots of things that are sweet that don't bring GMOs with it or processing with it that could be okay. Now, there are exceptions. If you're a brittle diabetic, if you're a type 1 diabetic, then obviously we have to be even more careful. That's just common sense, okay?
Right.
But it doesn't mean that we can't introduce some of these things that we've talked about.
This is Dr. Nick Wilson. This is the Ask Dr. Wilson show. Hey, this has been a fun episode, and I hope you enjoyed this. Again, you can get on facebook.com/AskDrWilson. Get on Instagram, follow us there. You can also find us on YouTube, Dr. Nick Wilson on YouTube. Hey, subscribe to those pages and get the information directly to you when you do so. Rate the show if you're listening on the podcast. Again, it's Ask Dr. Wilson. Hey, have a great day. Make it a great rest of your life, and we will see you next time.